I think these days, especially in the States, you have to be...
For years, people labeled him as creepy without ever fully explaining why. It was a reputation that followed him everywhere, shaping how others saw him long before the truth started to surface. But now, decades later, new details are finally bringing a different side of the story into focus. What really happened back then, and why did so many people get it so wrong for so long? Join us as we uncover the full story behind the label and find out what was really going on all those years ago. A restless childhood. Long before he became the wild frontman of The Doors, Jim Morrison was a quiet and intelligent boy growing up in a strict military family. He was born on December 8, 1943, in Melbourne, Florida. His father, George Stephen Morrison, was a career officer in the United States Navy. Because of his father's military duties, the family moved often during Jim's childhood. They lived in several different states and sometimes even changed locations within short periods of time. For many children, moving from place to place can be difficult, and Jim was no exception. Constantly starting over at new schools made it hard for him to build lasting friendships. While other children formed close groups of friends, Jim often found himself on the outside, looking in. As a result, he spent a great deal of time alone. Instead of feeling lonely, however, he often turned to books for company. From an early age, Jim showed a deep interest in reading. He wasn't interested only in typical children's books. As he grew older, he became fascinated by philosophy, history, psychology, and literature. Teachers and classmates noticed that he was unusually curious and intelligent. He enjoyed asking difficult questions and challenging ideas that most people accepted without much thought. This habit of questioning authority appeared early in his life. Family members and people who knew him often described him as independent and stubborn. He did not like being told what to think or how to behave. While his father valued discipline and order because of his military background, Jim increasingly pushed against those expectations. The differences between them grew stronger as he entered his teenage years. Over time, Jim became emotionally distant from his family. He wanted a life that was very different from the one his parents imagined for him. Rather than following a traditional path, he dreamed of becoming an artist, writer, and creative thinker. The military world that shaped his childhood felt restrictive to him, and he wanted to break free from it. As a young adult, he began reinventing himself. He developed the image of a poet and intellectual, someone driven by ideas rather than rules. His growing passion for literature played a major role in this transformation. Among the thinkers who influenced him was Friedrich Nietzsche, whose writings explored freedom, individuality, and the limits of conventional morality. Jim also admired Beat Generation writers such as Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg, who challenged social norms and encouraged personal expression. He was equally fascinated by French symbolism and poetry, especially writers who explored dreams, emotions, and the hidden parts of the human mind. Alongside these literary influences came an interest in altered states of consciousness and expanded perception, subjects that would continue to shape his worldview throughout his life. The gap between Jim and his family eventually became so large that he rarely spoke about them publicly. In fact, he sometimes claimed that his parents were essentially dead to him, a statement that shocked many people but reflected how deeply separated he felt from his upbringing. As Jim left his childhood behind and headed toward California, he was about to find the people who would help turn his poems and ideas into something much bigger than he ever imagined. Birth of a rock star. After years of feeling disconnected from his family and searching for his own identity, Jim Morrison headed to California. It was a move that would completely change the direction of his life. Although he would eventually become one of the most famous rock stars of the 1960s, music was not his original goal. At the time, Morrison was far more interested in filmmaking and writing. He enrolled in the film program at UCLA, one of the most respected schools for aspiring filmmakers. While studying there, he explored experimental film techniques and worked on student projects that reflected his interest in art, poetry, and unconventional ideas. Many of his classmates noticed that he had a unique perspective and a strong creative imagination. Even then, he seemed more interested in expressing ideas than following traditional rules. Outside of school, Morrison spent much of his time around Venice Beach in Los Angeles. The area was full of artists, musicians, writers, and free thinkers. It was an environment that matched his personality perfectly. He continued writing poetry, filling notebooks with lyrics, thoughts, and observations. At the time, he still saw himself primarily as a writer rather than a performer. Everything changed after a chance encounter with fellow UCLA student Ray Manzarek. The two already knew each other from film school, but their famous meeting happened after graduation on Venice Beach. During their conversation, Morrison mentioned that he had been writing songs. Curious, Manzarek asked to hear some of the lyrics. When Morrison recited parts of what would later become Moonlight Drive, Manzarek was impressed. He believed the lyrics had real potential and immediately saw an opportunity to turn Morrison's words into music. The two quickly began discussing the idea of forming a band. What started as a casual conversation soon became a serious project. The next step was finding the right musicians. Guitarist Robbie Krieger and drummer John Densmore joined the group, completing the lineup that would become The Doors. The band's name came from Aldous Huxley's book The Doors of Perception, which itself was inspired by a quote from poet William Blake. The name reflected the group's interest in creativity, consciousness, and exploring new ideas. In the beginning, The Doors played in small clubs around Los Angeles. Their performances helped them build a local following, but Morrison was not yet the confident frontman people would later remember. In fact, he struggled with stage fright during some of the band's earliest shows. He often faced away from the audience or kept his eyes down while performing. As time went on, however, something changed. Morrison gradually became more comfortable on stage and discovered that audiences were fascinated by his presence. His confidence grew with each performance. He learned how to command attention, and his reputation quickly spread throughout the Los Angeles music scene. Before long, The Doors were attracting larger crowds, and Morrison was transforming from a quiet poet into one of rock music's most unforgettable frontmen. Soon, the small club performances would give way to national fame, and Jim Morrison's life would never be the same again. Before we go on, I want to quickly share something I genuinely think is important. Your brain produces toxic waste every single day as you think and remember. Every night while you sleep, a dedicated system is supposed to flush all of it out. After 50, that system slows down, not because of aging, but because of 6 specific things that block it. Every one of them is fixable. Go to brainresearchreport.com right now and take a look, or it's linked in the description if that's easier. This is one of those things that makes a real difference. All right, back to the video. The meteoric rise of The Doors. By 1966, The Doors had moved beyond playing small clubs in Los Angeles and were beginning to attract serious attention from the music industry. Their unique sound combined rock, blues, jazz, and poetry in a way that stood out from many other bands of the time. At the center of it all was Jim Morrison, whose unusual lyrics and magnetic stage presence made him impossible to ignore. The band's breakthrough came when they signed a recording contract and entered the studio to record their debut album, The Doors. Released in early 1967, the album featured several songs that would become classics. However, it was one particular track that changed everything, Light My Fire. When Light My Fire was released as a single, it quickly climbed the charts. The song reached #1 in the United States and introduced The Doors to millions of listeners. Almost overnight, the band went from being a popular local act to one of the biggest names in rock music. Concert venues became larger, crowds became bigger, and media attention increased dramatically. As The Doors rose to fame, Jim Morrison became the main focus of public fascination. He possessed a combination of charisma, confidence, and unpredictability that audiences found captivating. Fans never knew exactly what he might do during a performance. Some nights he appeared thoughtful and poetic. Other nights he seemed wild and confrontational. This unpredictability became a major part of his appeal. Before long, Morrison was being described as one of rock music's ultimate rebels. Unlike many performers who carefully managed their public image, Morrison often seemed uninterested in following expectations. His long hair, outspoken personality, and refusal to conform made him a symbol of rebellion for many young people. Journalists frequently compared him to other major stars of the era, but Morrison's image was distinct. He projected both intelligence and danger, a combination that attracted enormous attention. television played a major role in expanding the Doors' popularity. Appearances on national programs brought the band into living rooms across America. These performances helped them reach audiences far beyond California. At the same time, they also increased public scrutiny. Morrison's behavior often made television producers nervous, and his willingness to challenge authority created tension with more conservative audiences. As media coverage increased, Morrison became one of the most talked-about figures in popular music. Reporters wanted interviews, photographers wanted pictures, and fans wanted constant access to every detail of his life. While some celebrities enjoyed that level of attention, Morrison often appeared uncomfortable with it. He had originally seen himself as a writer and artist, not a traditional celebrity. Fame also began affecting his personal life. His drinking became more frequent and more severe. Alcohol had always been present in his life, but as pressure increased, so did his consumption. Friends and bandmates noticed changes in his behavior. He became more difficult to predict and sometimes harder to work with. These problems created growing tensions within the Doors. While the other members remained focused on making music and maintaining the band's success, Morrison increasingly pushed boundaries both on and off stage. Arguments became more common, and concerns about his behavior started to grow. At the same time, Morrison was becoming a major figure within the youth counterculture of the 1960s. Many young people saw him as someone who rejected authority and challenged social norms. However, the public image did not always match reality. While fans often viewed him as a fearless rebel, those closest to him saw a more complicated person struggling with fame, pressure, and self-destructive habits. As his popularity grew, so did the signs that his behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. What had once seemed exciting and unpredictable was beginning to create serious problems. And before long, those problems would lead to one of the most infamous incidents of his career, the New Haven arrest. By late 1967, Jim Morrison's reputation as a rebellious and unpredictable performer was already growing. The Doors were becoming one of the biggest rock bands in America, but Morrison's behavior was also attracting increasing attention from law enforcement and local authorities. That tension exploded on December 9, 1967, during a concert in New Haven, Connecticut, in what would become one of the most famous incidents of his career. The trouble began before the show had even started. According to several accounts, Morrison was backstage with a female companion in an area near the concert venue. A police officer reportedly approached the couple and ordered them to leave. Morrison allegedly refused and argued with the officer. Accounts differ on exactly what happened next, but multiple reports claim that the officer did not realize he was confronting the lead singer of the band that was about to perform. The situation quickly escalated. Morrison allegedly continued challenging the officer's authority, and the confrontation became heated. According to Morrison's later version of events, the officer used mace on him during the encounter. Whether every detail happened exactly as Morrison described remains debated, but there was no question that a serious conflict had taken place before he ever stepped onto the stage. When the concert began, Morrison appeared angry and determined to tell the audience what had happened. During the performance, he spoke directly to the crowd about the backstage incident and criticized the police officer involved. The audience reacted loudly, and the atmosphere inside the venue became increasingly tense. As Morrison continued discussing the confrontation, police officers monitoring the concert decided to intervene. In an unprecedented moment for a major rock performance, officers walked onto the stage while the show was still underway. Morrison was arrested in front of thousands of shocked fans and taken into custody before the concert could be completed. The incident immediately made headlines across the country. Newspapers and television programs reported on what many described as the first on-stage arrest of a major rock star. The unusual nature of the event captured public attention, and Morrison quickly became a symbol of resistance to authority for many young fans. Supporters viewed him as someone willing to stand up to police and challenge established power. Critics, however, saw him as reckless and disrespectful. Regardless of which side people took, the arrest significantly increased his national profile. It also strengthened his image as an anti-establishment figure during a time when many young Americans were questioning traditional institutions. More importantly, the New Haven arrest marked a turning point in Morrison's relationship with authorities. Police departments, venue managers, and local officials began paying much closer attention to the Doors' performances. Concerts that might once have been viewed as ordinary rock shows were now treated as potential sources of trouble. The incident also foreshadowed the much larger legal battles that would follow. As Morrison continued pushing boundaries both on and off stage, confrontations with authorities became more frequent, and an even bigger controversy was waiting just around the corner: the 1969 Miami concert. By 1969, Jim Morrison and the Doors were already under pressure. Legal trouble, growing media attention, and Morrison's heavy drinking had started to affect both his behavior and the band's stability. But nothing would damage his career more than the concert in Miami, Florida on March 1, 1969. In the days leading up to the Miami concert, Morrison's condition was already poor. Friends and bandmates noticed that he was drinking heavily and often appeared unfocused. Alcohol had become a major part of his daily life, and it was affecting his judgment and energy. By the time the band prepared for the Miami show, tensions were already high within the group. The concert itself was organized in a politically charged environment. The venue, the Dinner Key Auditorium, was large, poorly prepared, and overcrowded. Promoters had oversold tickets, and thousands of people were packed into a space not suited for the crowd size. The heat, noise, and confusion created a difficult atmosphere even before the performance began. When the Doors finally took the stage, the situation did not improve. The crowd was restless, and Morrison's mood appeared unpredictable. Some witnesses said he was already intoxicated before the show began. His speech was slurred at times, and his movements were inconsistent. As the performance continued, the energy between Morrison and the audience became increasingly hostile. Instead of a smooth concert, there were interruptions, shouting, and moments of tension. Morrison began speaking directly to the crowd in a way that felt confrontational. He challenged them, mocked them, and at times encouraged chaos. The audience responded with mixed reactions. Some cheered, others grew angry. The most serious controversy came from what happened during the performance. Several witnesses later claimed that Morrison exposed himself on stage. These claims quickly spread after the concert ended, leading to a wave of outrage in the media and public. However, the situation has always been unclear. Different witnesses gave conflicting accounts. Some said they saw the act clearly, while others insisted it never happened at all. There were no definitive photographs or recordings to confirm what took place. This lack of evidence has kept the incident debated for decades. Despite the uncertainty, the accusation alone was enough to trigger serious consequences. News of the Miami concert spread quickly, and the reaction was intense. Political leaders, religious groups, and community organizations called for action against Morrison and the Doors. The band was labeled as dangerous and inappropriate, especially for younger audiences. Many venues across the country responded by canceling upcoming concerts. Radio stations reduced airplay of their music, and promoters became hesitant to book the band. The backlash was not limited to Miami. It spread nationwide within weeks. Authorities eventually filed obscenity-related charges against Morrison. The case moved into the legal system, leading to court proceedings that would drag on for years. Morrison denied the most serious allegations, but was forced to defend himself in a highly public and hostile environment. Boston riot. After the Miami concert controversy, Jim Morrison and the Doors were under constant pressure. The legal case was still developing, but the public backlash had already changed how people viewed the band. Every show after that carried extra tension, and things continued to get worse as the tour moved forward. Following the Miami incident, Morrison's life became more unstable. He was dealing with ongoing legal problems related to the obscenity charges, which meant frequent meetings with lawyers and growing stress. At the same time, his drinking increased. Alcohol had become a regular part of his routine, and it often affected his behavior during performances. Inside the band, tensions were also rising. The other members of the Doors were focused on continuing their music careers and maintaining their reputations. But Morrison's unpredictable behavior made that difficult. There were disagreements about how to handle performances, scheduling, and public appearances. What had once been a tight creative group was now becoming strained. One of the most serious problems during this period happened in Boston. The concert was already surrounded by concern before it even began. Security teams and venue staff were aware of Morrison's reputation by this point, and there was worry about how the crowd might react. During the show, the atmosphere became increasingly tense. Morrison's performance was unpredictable, shifting between calm moments and sudden bursts of energy and confrontation. Some audience members reacted strongly, while others seemed unsure of what was happening on stage. As the concert continued, reports described growing unrest in the crowd. People were pushing forward, shouting, and reacting emotionally to Morrison's words and behavior. Police presence increased as the situation developed, and there were concerns that things could spiral out of control. Although the full details vary depending on the account, many reports describe the event as approaching riot-level disorder. By this stage in his career, Morrison's performances had become difficult to predict. Some nights he delivered powerful and focused shows, but other nights he appeared heavily intoxicated and disconnected. This inconsistency made it hard for venues to plan safely for each concert. Because of this, many venue owners began to hesitate before booking the doors. They were concerned about possible disruptions, legal risks, and crowd safety. Security arrangements became stricter, and in some cases, additional restrictions were placed on performances. The band's reputation was now a double-edged sword. While they still attracted large audiences, they also brought increased risk and uncertainty. And as pressure continued to build, Morrison's personal life was moving in an even darker direction. Allegations of abuse and violence. As Jim Morrison's fame grew, so did stories about his darker side. While many people saw him as a talented and creative performer, others described a very different version of him, especially when alcohol was involved. Over time, reports of aggression, emotional instability, and difficult relationships began to follow him almost everywhere he went. One of the most consistent claims about Morrison was his behavior when he was intoxicated. Friends, band members, and people who worked with him often said that alcohol changed his personality in noticeable ways. He could become unpredictable, loud, and at times aggressive. These moments were not constant, but they were frequent enough to become part of his public reputation. Some associates described situations where Morrison would shift quickly from calm to anger during arguments. In social settings, this could create uncomfortable or tense environments. While some people dismissed these stories as exaggerated or influenced by his fame, others insisted they were based on real experiences. Morrison's relationships with women were often described as intense and unstable. Several girlfriends over the years made allegations about emotional volatility and conflict. They spoke about periods of closeness followed by sudden arguments or separation. Some accounts also included claims of physical confrontations, although details often differed depending on the source. In many cases, there were no official records or legal proceedings connected to these allegations, which makes it difficult to confirm exact events. Still, the consistency of similar stories from different people added to Morrison's reputation for instability in personal relationships. The most important and well-known relationship in Morrison's life was with Pamela Courson. Their partnership was long, intense, and deeply complicated. They were often described as emotionally connected, but also frequently in conflict. Their relationship went through repeated cycles. At times, they were very close and supportive of each other. At other times, they argued heavily and separated for periods before reconnecting again. Friends and witnesses sometimes described explosive arguments between them, often influenced by alcohol and stress. Despite the instability, they remained deeply involved with each other until the end of Morrison's life. Their connection was both strong and troubled, and it played a major role in his personal world during his final years. These struggles would continue until the final chapter of his life, when everything moved toward an unexpected and uncertain end: the mysterious death. In the days leading up to his death, Morrison was living in Paris with Pamela Courson. Friends described him as quiet and mostly staying out of public life. He was not performing anymore and had stepped away from the intense schedule of touring and recording. Instead, he spent his time writing, resting, and trying to adjust to a slower lifestyle. On the night before his death, Morrison and Courson reportedly spent time together in their apartment. Accounts suggest they had a normal evening that included conversation, relaxation, and possibly watching films or listening to music. There were no clear signs at that moment that anything serious was about to happen. On the morning of July 3, 1971, Pamela Courson discovered Morrison unresponsive in the bathtub of their Paris apartment. According to her account, she initially thought he was sleeping. When she realized something was wrong, she called for help. Emergency services were contacted, but Morrison was already dead by the time assistance arrived. The exact timeline of when he died is still unclear because no medical examination was conducted immediately. The situation shocked those closest to him, but there was no large public scene at the time. Morrison's death was handled quietly, and news spread slowly in the following days. One of the most important and controversial details surrounding Morrison's death is that no autopsy was performed. French authorities accepted the initial assessment and did not conduct a full post-mortem examination. This decision immediately raised questions. In many countries, an unexplained death of a public figure would normally involve a detailed investigation. However, in Morrison's case, the lack of visible trauma and the circumstances led officials to rule out further examination. Because of this, many details about his final moments were never officially confirmed. This absence of medical evidence became a major reason why suspicions and theories later developed. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure. This explanation was accepted by French authorities and reported in early news coverage. At the time, many fans and the general public accepted this explanation without much debate. However, as more details emerged, some people began to question whether heart failure fully explained what happened. The lack of an autopsy and the limited investigation made it difficult for anyone to verify the official conclusion with certainty. One of the most widely discussed alternative theories is that Morrison may have died from a heroin overdose. Several accounts over the years have suggested that drugs may have played a role in his death. Some stories claim that Morrison had been seen at a Paris nightclub shortly before his death, where he may have been exposed to substances. Others suggest that he had been struggling with drug use in addition to alcohol during his final months. Supporters of this theory point to his history of substance use and the sudden nature of his death as possible supporting factors. However, there is no official evidence confirming a heroin overdose, and no toxicology report exists to verify it. Many of the accounts surrounding Morrison's death contain inconsistencies. Different witnesses provided different versions of his final hours, and timelines do not always match. Some reports suggest he appeared healthy the night before, while others claim he was unwell. There is also confusion about who last saw him alive and what his exact condition was in the hours leading up to his death. However, none of these sightings have ever been verified. Despite this, the idea has remained popular in certain circles, partly because of Morrison's mysterious personality and sudden death at a young age. These theories continue to grow because of the gaps in official information. When details are missing, speculation often fills the space. Despite the many theories, only a few facts about Morrison's death are confirmed. He died in Paris in July 1971 at the age of 27. He was living with Pamela Courson at the time, and she was the person who found him. The official cause of death was recorded as heart failure, and no autopsy was performed. Beyond these basic facts, much of the remaining information is based on personal accounts and cannot be fully verified. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that go beyond the headlines.